The unbreakable prey, the Kryllian Empire had existed for over 8,000 years. And in all that time, they had never encountered a species they could not break. Supreme Commander Vexith stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Talon, watching the view screen display a small blue and green world designated as Target 848. This would be another easy conquest, another species added to the long list of civilizations that had fallen before Kryllian might. Vexith was a towering figure, even among his own kind. His exoskeleton gleamed like polished obsidian, segmented plates covering a body built for war, 6 arms, each ending in razor-sharp talons, marked him as a prime specimen of Kryllian evolution. His compound eyes could track 100 targets simultaneously, and his mandibles could crush steel. He had commanded fleets for 3 centuries, and every battle had ended in total victory. The intelligence reports on this new species were almost disappointing. They called themselves humans, and they had established a small colony on a moon they named New Haven. Only 15,000 of them lived there, mining rare minerals and conducting research. The scanners showed them to be bipedal creatures with soft skin, no natural weapons, and fragile bone structures. They required constant supplies of water and oxygen. They were vulnerable to temperature extremes. They had only 2 arms and 2 legs. Pathetic, muttered Subcommander This, second in command. They are barely worth the fuel we spent getting here. Vexith studied the data more carefully. Something nagged at him, a feeling he had not experienced in decades. The humans had detected the Kryllian fleet the moment they entered the star system. That should have been impossible. Their defensive satellites had immediately powered up, arranging themselves in patterns that suggested mathematical sophistication. Their colony shields had activated before Vexith had even sent a warning message. They knew we were coming, Vexith observed. How did they know? Thrax dismissed the concern with a wave of his lower arms. Luck perhaps, or simple paranoia. It matters not. We have 6 warships. They have mining equipment and research stations. This will be over before the day cycle ends. Vexith was not so certain, but he proceeded with standard protocol. He opened a communication channel to the human colony. A single figure appeared on the screen, a human female with short dark hair and eyes that reminded Vexith of a hunting predator. She wore a simple uniform with no decorations, no symbols of rank that Kryllian sensors could identify. I'm Administrator Sir Chin, she said, her voice calm and clear. You have entered New Haven territory without permission. State your business. Vexith felt a flicker of surprise. Most species begged for mercy or tried to bargain when they saw a Kryllian fleet. This human seemed almost bored. He decided to follow the traditional script anyway. I am Supreme Commander Vexith of the Kryllian Empire. This world and everything on it now belongs to the Empire. You will deactivate your defenses, surrender all weapons, and prepare for processing. Resistance will result in immediate extermination. Administrator Chin tilted her head slightly as if considering his words. Then she did something that shocked every Kryllian on the bridge. She smiled. No, she said simply, I don't think we will. The communication ended. From her side, Vexith stared at the blank screen, his mandibles clicking in agitation. In 8,000 years of Kryllian history, and 300 years of his personal service, no one had ever responded to a surrender demand with a flat refusal. Delivered with a smile, destroy their communication satellites, Vexith ordered, show them the cost of defiance. The Crimson Talon's weapon systems locked onto the nearest satellite cluster and fired. Plasma bolts streaked through space, enough destructive power to vaporize a small moon, but the satellites moved, they moved with impossible speed and precision, scattering in a pattern that seemed random but was clearly calculated. Only 3 out of 20 satellites were destroyed, the rest repositioned themselves and began transmitting on frequencies that interfered with Krillian targeting systems. What is happening? Thrax demanded. How did they move so fast? The tactical officer's voice was uncertain. Their reaction time is beyond our calculations, Commander. They are anticipating our targeting solutions before we complete them. Vexith felt the unfamiliar sensation. Again, stronger now. It was not fear, not exactly. The Krillians did not feel fear, but it was something close, something that had been bred out of his species millennia ago. It was doubt. Land-ground forces, he commanded. We will take the colony building by building if necessary. 6 assault drop ships launched from the Krillian fleet, each carrying 200 fully armed warriors. Vexith watched their descent on the tactical display, expecting to see the humans scrambling in panic. Instead, he saw something that made his compound eyes widen. The humans were dancing. They were not fleeing into bunkers or hiding in shelters. They were moving through the colony in small groups, following patterns that seemed choreographed. When the Krillian drop ships entered the atmosphere, the humans activated what appeared to be mining charges placed throughout the landing zones. The explosions were not powerful enough to destroy the drop ships, but they created massive dust clouds that confused sensors and scattered debris that damaged propulsion systems. 3 drop ships crashed, 3 more landed off target, separated from each other by kilometers of rough terrain. The warriors aboard were trained for immediate assault, but they found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to meet them directly. Vexith monitored the ground reports with growing frustration. His warriors were the finest soldiers in the galaxy, bred for combat across countless generations. But the humans were using tactics that made no sense. They would attack from one direction, force the Krillians to respond, then disappear completely. When the warriors pursued, they found traps that were clearly improvised from industrial equipment. A mining laser reprogrammed to fire impulses cut through Krillian armor. A cargo container rigged with explosives and dropped from a crane crushed an entire squad. A ventilation system flooded with superheated steam turned a corridor into a killing zone. They are using their own infrastructure as weapons, the tactical officer reported. They know every meter of this colony. They built it. They understand it in ways we cannot. One of the ground commanders sent a desperate transmission. Supreme Commander, we have casualties. 17% of our forces combat ineffective. The humans are not fighting like any species we have encountered. They do not stand and fight. They hit us and vanish. They use the environment itself against us. It is like fighting ghosts. Vexith made a decision. He ordered the warriors to pull back and regroup. This was supposed to be a simple conquest, a routine operation to add another world to the empire. Instead, it was becoming a humiliation. He opened another communication channel. To Administrator Qin, this time she appeared with visible damage in the background. Fire suppression systems were working and several humans moved behind her carrying wounded on stretchers, but Qin herself looked completely composed. Supreme Commander, she said pleasantly, have you reconsidered your position? Vexitha's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. You cannot win. We have thousands of ships. We control hundreds of worlds. You are 15,000 individuals on a single moon. Qin nodded as if he had said something reasonable. That is all true, but here is what you do not understand about humans, Commander. We do not need to win. We only need to make victory cost more than you are willing to pay. She gestured to something off-screen and the view shifted to show what appeared to be a warehouse. Inside were stacks upon stacks of containers, each marked with symbols that Krillian computers translated as warnings about explosives and volatile materials. We are miners, Shin continued. We work with explosives every day. We have enough charges in this facility alone to crack this moon's crust. If you continue your attack, we will detonate everything. Your warriors will die. We will die, and you will gain nothing but a debris field. You are bluffing, Vexit said, but he was not certain. Chen's smile returned, but this time it was cold and hard. We are human, Commander. We once had weapons on our home world that could destroy our entire planet. We built them knowing they might end us. We aimed them at ourselves for decades, playing a game where one mistake would kill billions, and somehow we survived that madness. Do you really think we are afraid to die here so far from home? If it means you learned that humans are not prey. Vexith studied her face, looking for any sign of deception. He saw only absolute certainty. This human female would kill herself, her entire colony, and hundreds of Krillian warriors without hesitation if he pressed the attack, not out of rage or fear, but out of cold calculation. For the first time in 300 years, Supreme Commander Vexith retreated. He ordered his forces to withdraw to the fleet. As the dropships lifted away from New Haven, he watched the human colony on his screens. The humans did not celebrate. They immediately began repairing damage, treating wounded, and reinforcing their defenses. They were preparing for the next attack. They knew it would come, and somehow impossibly they seemed almost eager for it. Thrax approached, his posture showing confusion. Commander, we could have taken the colony. Yes, we would have suffered losses, but we would have won. Vexith did not look away from the screen. No, he said quietly, we would have destroyed the colony, but we would not have won. These humans showed us something today, Thrax. They showed us that they would rather die than submit. Every species we have conquered feared death more than servitude, but these creatures fear nothing at all. He thought about Administrator Chen's words about weapons aimed at themselves, about surviving their own madness. What kind of species developed the power to destroy itself and then chose not to use it? What kind of mind could stare at extinction and laugh at it? Send a message to the Krillian High Command, Vexith ordered. Tell them we have encountered a new species. Tell them these humans are dangerous, not because they are strong, but because they refuse to accept defeat even when defeat is certain. Tell them we need to understand these creatures before we engage them again. As the Crimson Talon left the star system, Vexith could not shake the image of Administrator Chen's smile from his mind. It haunted him in a way that no battle, no victory, no conquest ever had. The Krillian Empire had ruled through fear for 8,000 years. But today, for the first time, Vexith realized that fear could work in both directions. The humans were not afraid of the Krillians, perhaps, he thought, with something approaching wonder. Perhaps the Krillians should be afraid of the humans. The retreat from New Haven was not an ending, it was a beginning. And Supreme Commander Vexith had the terrible certainty that everything his empire believed about war, about conquest, about the nature of prey and predator was about to change forever. The price of underestimation. The Krillian High Command did not respond well to Vexath's report. For 8,000 years, the Empire had built its reputation on absolute dominance. Single defeat, even a tactical withdrawal, was unacceptable. Within 3 standard cycles, Vexith received new orders. He was to return to human space with a full battle fleet and crush this upstart species completely. Failure was not an option. Refusal meant execution. Vexith assembled the largest military force he had ever commanded, 50 warships, each capable of reducing a planet to ash. 200,000 elite warriors, armed with weapons that had conquered galaxies. The finest military minds in the Krillian Empire worked alongside him, analyzing every second of data from the New Haven encounter. They would not be surprised again. The human species had expanded since Vexath's first encounter. Intelligence reports showed they now controlled 12 colony worlds and had established trade relationships with 3 minor species. Their technology had improved at a rate that Krillian analysts found disturbing. They were learning too fast, adapting too quickly, sharing knowledge in ways that seemed almost reckless. The target was a world called Sentinel Ridge, home to 80,000 humans and a major shipyard facility. Destroying it would human expansion and send a clear message about the cost of defying the Empire. Vexith chose it specifically because intelligence suggested it was lightly defended with most human military assets, protecting their core worlds. The Krillian fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, weapons charged and ready. Vexith expected panic, desperate calls for reinforcement, perhaps even immediate surrender. Instead, he received a communication request within seconds of arrival. Human male appeared on the screen, older than Administrator Chen had been, with gray hair and a face marked by deep lines. He wore a military uniform, covered in symbols that Krillian computers could not translate. His eyes were calm, almost welcoming. Supreme Commander Vexith, the human said, his voice carrying an accent that suggested he came from a different region than Chin. I am Admiral Marcus Webb. We have been expecting you. Vexith felt that sensation again, that doubt that had haunted him since New Haven. You were expecting the Krillian Empire's full battle fleet. Webb smiled slightly. We have been expecting a response to New Haven for months. We knew you would come back. We knew you would bring overwhelming force. We are human. Commander, we understand how empires think. We have built and destroyed several of our own. Then you understand that resistance is futile. Vexith replied, following the script, even though something felt wrong about this. Entire situation. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Admiral Webb shook his head slowly. Commander, I am going to do something that might seem strange to you. I'm going to give you one chance to leave, turn your fleet around, return to Krillian space, and never threaten the human world again. If you do this, we will consider the New Haven incident closed. We will not seek revenge. We will not pursue your ships. You can go home and tell your high command that humans are not worth the trouble. Thrax made a clicking sound that was the Krillian equivalent of laughter. The arrogance of this species is astonishing. Shall I destroy their orbital stations to demonstrate our seriousness? But Vexith held up one hand, stopping him. Why would you offer this, Admiral? You know what we are capable of. You know what we have done to thousands of species. Why give us a chance to retreat? Webb's expression grew somber because, unlike you, Commander, we have seen what total war looks like. We have fought ourselves in conflicts that consumed entire continents. We have built weapons so terrible that using them would make us monsters. We know the true cost of violence, and we do not celebrate it. We do not want to destroy your fleet, but we will if we must. You cannot destroy my fleet, Vexith stated. We outnumber your forces 10 to 1. Our weapons are superior. Our warriors are bred for battle across countless generations. Webb nodded slowly. All of that is true. And if this were a traditional battle, you would win, but this will not be a traditional battle, Commander, because humans do not fight the way you expect. We do not fight the way anyone expects. Vexith had heard enough. He gave the order to attack. The Krillian fleet moved forward in perfect formation, a wall of firepower that had broken 1,000 worlds. Their targeting systems locked onto the human orbital facilities and planetary defense platforms. The first salvo was designed to overwhelm defensive shields and create panic. The plasma bolts never reached their target. Space around Sentinel Ridge suddenly filled with small objects, thousands of them moving in complex patterns. Krillian sensors identified them as cargo containers, mining drones, communication satellites, and pieces of scrap metal. They were junk debris, things that should not have posed any threat to warships. But they were moving not randomly, but in calculated trajectories that intersected with every single plasma bolt the Krillian fleet had fired. The explosions created a wall of superheated metal and electromagnetic interference that scrambled sensors and disrupted targeting systems. They are using garbage as a defensive screen, the tactical officer reported, disbelief evident in his voice. They calculated the trajectory of our weapons' fire and intercepted it with debris. Vexith watched in fascination as the human defense unfolded. It was wasteful, inefficient, and completely unpredictable. No Krillian commander would ever sacrifice valuable resources in such a manner, but it was working. Adjust firing solutions, he ordered. Target the planet directly. Ignore the orbital assets. The fleet repositioned, aiming massive bombardment cannons at Sentinel Ridge itself. These weapons could crack continental plates and boil oceans. No debris field could stop them. Admiral Webb appeared on the communication screen again. I see you have made your choice, Commander. I'm sorry, truly I am. The human shipyard facilities suddenly came alive. Structures that Krillian intelligence had identified as half-built civilian vessels began moving, They were not ships at all. They were massive rail guns disguised as construction frames. Hidden in plain sight, they had been waiting, powered down and undetectable. For exactly this moment, the rail guns fired solid projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed, no energy. Shields could stop kinetic weapons moving that fast. 3 Krillian warships simply ceased to exist, torn apart by impacts that released more energy than nuclear explosions. 5 more were crippled, their hulls breached, their systems failing. Vexatha's mandibles clicked in shock. Return fire, destroy those weapons, but the rail guns were already moving, pulled by tug ships into new positions. More debris clouds appeared, providing cover, and now human ships were launching from the planet, dozens of them, small and fast, and coordinating in ways that suggested a single shared consciousness. They are using network tactics, the tactical officer shouted. Over alarms, every ship is sharing sensor data, distributing targeting solutions. They are fighting like a single organism with 100 bodies. The battle descended into chaos. Krillian warriors were trained for glory in combat, for individual achievement and personal honor. The humans fought with cold efficiency, sacrificing individual ships without hesitation if it achieved a tactical advantage. They used their smaller size and greater maneuverability to stay inside the effective range of Krillian weapons, firing at point-blank range before breaking away. 1 human ship rammed a Krillian cruiser, deliberately, its pilot steering directly into the engine section and detonating the ship's reactor. The explosion destroyed the cruiser and damaged 2 more vessels nearby. Vexith watched the tactical display, trying to understand what kind of species would sacrifice its own warriors so casually. Then he realized the humans were not sacrificing warriors. The ships were automated, controlled remotely from the planet's surface. The humans were fighting without risking any lives at all, while Krillian warriors died by the hundreds. They are cowards, Thrax snarled. They hide and send machines to fight for them, but Vexith understood better now. No, he said quietly, they are smart. Why risk soldiers when you can risk metal? Why trade lives when you can trade resources? They are fighting efficiently, while we fight honorably, and efficiency is winning. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Krillian fleet was larger and more powerful, but the humans had turned the entire Sentinel Ridge system into a weapon. Asteroid fields became kinetic. Bombardment platforms, mining stations became fortified bunkers. Civilian infrastructure became military assets. Everything the humans had built, they could weaponize. When the losses reached 30%, Vexith made a decision that would have been unthinkable for any Krillian commander. He ordered a full retreat. As the surviving ships withdrew, Admiral Webb appeared one final time on the communication screen. He looked tired, and there was no triumph in his expression. Commander Vexith, he said softly, I take no pleasure in what happened here today. We did not want this war, but you need to understand something about humanity. We are not warriors by nature. We are survivors. We have spent our entire existence fighting entropy, fighting extinction, fighting the universe itself. We have learned to turn anything into a tool, any situation into an advantage, not because we are cruel, but because we refuse to accept that anything is impossible. Vexith listened, his compound eyes fixed on the Human's face, Webb continued, your empire has existed for 8,000 years. Built on conquest and domination, that is impressive truly, but humans have a saying, Commander, it is not the size of the dog in the fight but the size of the fight in the dog. You are bigger, stronger, and more powerful than we are. But we will never stop fighting. We will never surrender. We will adapt. We will learn, and we will find a way to survive. That is what we do. That is what we have always done. What do you want? Vexith asked, and he was surprised to hear genuine curiosity in his own voice rather than anger. Peace, Webb answered immediately. We want to be left alone to build our civilization. We want to trade with other species too. Learn and grow and explore. We do not want to destroy you, Commander. We want to exist alongside you, but we will not be conquered, not by you, not by anyone. Is that something your empire can accept? Vexith was silent for a long moment. He thought about 8,000 years of Krillian history of countless species ground beneath their military might. He thought about the certainty that had guided every decision his people had made for millennia, and he thought about 15,000 humans on New Haven who had been willing to die rather than submit, and 80,000 humans on Sentinel Ridge who had turned their entire world into a trap. I will take your message to the High Command, he said finally. I cannot promise they will listen. The Krillian way is old and deeply rooted. Webb nodded. Then I will give you something to help convince them. Tell them this. If they choose war with humanity, we will not fight alone. We have been making friends, Commander. The species you dismiss as minor powers are watching what happens here. They see that humans can stand against the mighty Krillian Empire. Some of them are already reaching out to us, asking for alliance, for protection, for the hope that they too can be free. If you force us into a war, it will not be between Krillia and humanity. It will be between the old order and a new one, and we both know that eventually the old order always falls. The communication ended. Vexith sat in his command chair, surrounded by damaged systems and wounded warriors, and contemplated the future. The Krillian Empire stood at a crossroads. They could continue down the path of conquest, grinding themselves against an enemy that refused to break, or they could accept that the galaxy had changed, that a new force had emerged that operated by different rules. When Vexith returned to the Krillian home world, he stood before the High Command and delivered a report that would change everything. He told them about the humans, about their adaptability and resilience, about their willingness to die rather than submit. He told them about the allies gathering around the strange species, about the new order forming in the shadows of the old empire. And he told them something that no Krillian commander had ever said before. He told them that continuing this war was not worth the cost. The debate raged for months. Some members of the High Command called for total war, for the complete extermination of humanity and any species that allied with them. Others, influenced by Vexath's reports and the undeniable losses at Sentinel Ridge, argued for a different approach. In the end, pragmatism won over pride. The Krillian Empire offered humanity a treaty, not a surrender but a recognition. Human space would be acknowledged as sovereign territory, trade would be established, borders would be respected. The empire would not expand into human-controlled Regions and humans would not interfere, with Krillian interests elsewhere. It was not the peace Admiral Webb had hoped. But it was a beginning. Vexith attended the treaty signing as the Krillian representative, administrator. Sarah Chen was there representing New Haven. Admiral Marcus Webb stood for Sentinel Ridge, and dozens of other humans and aliens filled the hall, witnesses to a moment that would reshape galactic politics. As Vexith placed his mark on the treaty, Chen approached him. "Commander," she said quietly, "I want you to know something we never wanted to be your enemy. We just wanted the right to determine our own destiny." Vexith looked at this small, soft creature who had defied his entire empire. "I have learned much from your species, administrator. You have taught the Krillians that strength is not only measured in weapons and warriors. Sometimes the strongest thing a species can do is refuse to accept defeat." Chen smiled. "And you have taught us that even the mightiest empires can choose a different path. That gives me hope for the future." The treaty was signed and a new era began. The Krillian Empire did not fall, but it transformed. Other species, emboldened by humanity's example, demanded their own treaties and recognition. The galaxy that had been ruled by fear for 8,000 years began to organize itself around new principles. Cooperation instead of conquest, trade instead of tribute, respect instead of dominance. Vexith retired from military service shortly after the treaty was finalized. He spent his remaining years studying human culture, trying to understand the deeper mysteries of this species that had changed everything. He learned about their art and music, their literature and philosophy. He studied their history, the wars they had fought against themselves, and the peace they had ultimately chosen. In his private journals, which would later be discovered and published across the galaxy, Vexith wrote a passage that would be quoted for generations. Krillian Empire conquered through fear and force, and we believe this made us strong, but the humans showed us a different kind of strength. They survived through adaptation, through cooperation, through an absolute refusal to accept that anything is impossible. They are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the fastest or the most numerous, but they are perhaps the most dangerous, not because they wish to destroy, but because they inspire others to believe that change is possible, that the old ways are not the only ways. In showing us this, they did not conquer the Krillian Empire. They simply made it irrelevant. Years later, when human children learned about first contact with the Krillians, they heard the story of Administrator Chen and Admiral Webb, of the Battle of Sentinel Ridge and the New Haven standoff. They learned that humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through superior weapons or advanced technology, but through determination and the refusal to surrender their freedom. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 different languages and on 1,000 different worlds, species that had once lived under the shadow of the Krillian Empire told their children a new story. They told them about the day the humans stood up to the predators and changed everything. The galaxy would never be the same, and somehow impossibly it was better for